Welcome to the deep dive. We dig into the sources so you get the essentials.
Glad to be here.
Today we're looking at Just Enough Research by Erika, specifically Chapter 2, The Basics. It's all about the fundamentals of UX research.
Exactly. Our mission today is to pull out those core practices. Who should do research, what kinds are there, when you use them.
The different roles people play, and how to handle those moments when people push back against doing research at all.
Right. So for you listening, whether you're new to this or just need a refresher, this should give you a really solid grasp of the basics from this chapter.
Perfect. Okay, so let's jump right in. The first big question Hall tackles is pretty fundamental. Who should actually be doing the research?
And her answer is, well, it's pretty clear. Everyone on the design team, not just a specialist tucked away somewhere.
Right. She argues that involving the whole team, designers, developers, whoever means they get direct contact, they actually hear the users.
It's about that firsthand experience. It's one thing to read a report, quite another to see someone struggle with your prototype.
Yeah, totally. It builds that shared understanding. Everyone's kind of on the same page because they've seen the same things, creates empathy.
Buy-in. When people see the problems themselves, they're much more invested in the solutions that come out of the research. It just fosters a more collaborative vibe.
Yeah, she tells that story, doesn't she? About the research director with the loud shirts.
Oh yeah, the scavenger hunt analogy. I like that.
Me too. And how different people notice different things. The content person focused on words, the developer on what's possible. Even someone's hobby, like motorcycles, brought a unique view.
Well, and that's the point, isn't it? When you're actively involved, you're not just getting information pushed at you.
Yeah.
You're interpreting it, engaging with it differently.
Makes sense. But okay, if everyone's involved, does that mean it's just a free-for-all? She brings up the research lead.
Right. But the lead isn't there to hoard the research. It's more about keeping things on track, making sure the quality's there.
So defining the purpose, clarifying roles, managing the process.
Exactly. They ensure the research actually answers the right questions and delivers something useful. They might do a lot of it or just guide the team. Yeah. But someone needs to kind of steer the ship.
Got it. So we know who should be involved, ideally. How do we figure out what research to do, this finding your purpose idea?
Yeah, Hall frames design as basically a series of decisions. Big ones, small ones, what features, how does navigation work, even tiny visual things.
Okay.
So the research you do, it should directly feed into those decisions you know you're going to have to make. Link the questions to the choices.
So it's not just research for research's sake, it needs a point.
Precisely. Be intentional.
Yeah.
She draws a line between, say, open-ended exploring, like, what could we even offer science teachers? That's broad.
Right. Exploring opportunity.
Versus more focused research on a known problem. Like, okay, how do we get these teachers to actually download and use our lesson plans? Much more specific.
The mobile first example she uses really highlights that, I thought. Organizations knew mobile was big, but what next?
Exactly. Did they just shrink the website, build an app, use social media? Research helped figure out the why first. What are people actually trying to do on their phones in relation to this service?
So understanding the need before jumping to a solution.
Maybe they just needed quick access to contact info on mobile, not the whole desktop experience. Or maybe an app made sense for specific tasks. Research clarifies that.
And the Fantastic Science Center example, thinking they'd reach students on field trips via social media.
Yeah, but then finding out schools banned phone use on trips.
Right, so they had to pivot.
And they discovered parents posting family pics were the real audience there. It just shows you have to understand the context, the actual user reality, not just your assumptions.
Okay, so purposeful research tied to decisions. Now, the different types of research, Hall isn't too academic here, right? It's more about utility.
Very pragmatic. She focuses on what helps when. 4 main types she lays out: generative, descriptive explanatory, evaluative, and causal.
Let's start with generative. She calls it the what's up with research.
Yeah, I love that phrasing. It's about exploration, idea generation, defining the problem space. You can't solve the right problem if you don't know what's really up with your users or the situation.
So when do you use this? Early stages.
Usually, yeah. Beginning of a project,
Right.
or maybe looking for new angles on an existing product, trying to uncover unmet needs, pain points.
And methods would be things like interviews, watching people.
Definitely. In-depth interviews are classic generative work. Field observation, seeing people in their natural habitat, even reviewing existing literature or trends fits here.
The Science Center, again, the grant, the new parents visiting the site.
Perfect example. There, what's up with new parents? Question probably led to talking to them, maybe watching families at the center. Understanding their needs could spark ideas, like that app for science events based on kids' ages.
Okay, that makes sense for finding the problem. What about the next type? Descriptive and explanatory, the what and how.
So now you've likely identified a problem area. This stage is about digging into the specifics, understanding the context, the people involved, how things currently work.
So moving from what's the problem to, okay, what are the details of this problem and the people experiencing it?
Exactly. It's about ensuring you're designing for the specific audience and their situation. You're describing the reality you need to design within.
Like the eye health organization's example she uses, designers don't know ophthalmologists' daily grind.
Right. So they do descriptive research, interview doctors, interview patients, look at the materials they use now to really understand their priorities, their language, what makes something useful to them.
And the Science Center's online robotics course idea.
Same principle. Before building it, they need to know, what computers do these kids have? Is their internet reliable? What other activities are they doing? That descriptive info shapes the course design.
Got it. Then she mentions evaluative research. Are we getting close? That sounds like testing.
Spot on. You've got ideas, maybe prototypes. Now you test them with actual users. Usability testing is the classic example here.
Watching people try to use it.
Yep. See where they get stuck, what works, what doesn't. It's iterative. You test, you learn, you refine, you test again, making sure you're actually building something usable.
And the last one, causal research. Why is this happening? Sounds like it's for after launch.
Typically, yeah. Your product's out there and you see certain behaviors. Why are people dropping off here? Why is this feature so popular?
Like the Science Center noticing the Friday singles night did well, but the Sunday films didn't.
Exactly. Causal research uses things like analytics, usage data, maybe surveys or A/B tests to figure out the reasons behind those patterns. Why the difference in attendance? What's driving it?
Okay, that clarifies the different types based on the stage and the question. Now let's shift to the roles in research. Hall makes a point that these aren't always job titles, right?
Crucial point. They're clusters of tasks. One person might wear multiple hats, especially on smaller teams.
So what are the key roles or functions she lists?
Okay, there's the author, who plans the study, writes the script or plan. Then the interviewer or moderator, the one actually talking to participants.
And the coordinator scheduler, or logistics, basically.
Yep, booking sessions, managing incentives, all that groundwork. Then you have the note taker or recorder.
She specifically suggests separating the interviewer and note-taker roles if possible.
Yeah, it's a really good practice. Lets the interviewer focus completely on the conversation, listening deeply, asking good follow-ups.
While the note-taker captures everything, makes sense. What else?
The recruiter, finding and screening the right people. Super important. The analyst, or often analyst, plural, who dives into the data, looks for patterns, synthesizes insights.
She emphasizes having more than one analyst.
Yeah, helps avoid individual bias, brings different perspectives to the interpretation. Then the documenter puts it all together in a report or presentation. And finally, observers, team members, clients watching sessions, ideally without disrupting things.
And people can switch roles between projects or even within one?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's flexible. The key is making sure all those functions happen regardless of who does them.
Okay, now for a big one. Overcoming objections.
Right.
We've all been there, trying to make the case for research.
Oh, yes. Hall tackles this head on. It's common, and she gives practical ways to respond. Like the classic, we don't have time.
What's the comeback?
Basically, you don't have time not to. Or rather, you don't have time to build the wrong thing and have to redo it. Frame it as risk reduction.
Good one. What about we don't have the money or the expertise?
Well, the expertise part, books like hers help. And budget-wise, she argues some research is always possible, even if it's scrappy. Critical thinking costs nothing.
Then there's the cynical one. The boss will just do what they want anyway.
That's tough. But Hall suggests good research, presented well, can sway opinions. And maybe it prompts a look at whether the culture really ignores facts.
What if someone insists on only one research method? We only do surveys.
Her point is clear. The research question dictates the method, not the other way around. Use the right tool for the job.
And the idea that you need a PhD, you have to be a scientist.
She differentiates applied research from academic science. You need curiosity, objectivity, good communication, analysis skills, not necessarily a lab coat. These are learnable.
Practical objections, too. We don't have a fancy lab, or it'll take too long.
Right. Often a laptop is enough infrastructure. And time spent up front often saves huge amounts of time later by avoiding wrong turns and rework. It can actually speed things up overall.
What about we'll find out everything in beta?
Beta tests different things. It's usually about bugs and polish on a near-final product. Early research is about fundamental needs, desirability, are we even building the right thing?
Okay, two more tricky ones. We know our user's product inside out already. That familiarity trap.
Yeah, familiarity can breed assumptions, blind spots. Hall argues for that fresh look, that direct user input, to challenge what you think you know. Get shared understanding, not just individual assumptions.
And the fear. Research will just change the scope.
Her reframe.
Mm-hmm.
Better to change scope intentionally based on evidence early on. It's much less painful than finding out later you've built something nobody wants or needs.
Then there's the research kills innovation argument.
She flips that. Real innovation comes from understanding real-world needs and context. Relevance fuels innovation. It doesn't stifle it.
She also gets into the why behind objections.
Yeah.
Laziness, fear.
Yeah, fear of being bothered, fear of being wrong, fear of talking to strangers even. But facing objections can actually help clarify your research goals.
Okay, moving on. Hall talks about how research context matters. Research in any situation. Freelancing, for example.
Right. As a freelancer, you need to build research into your process, your fees. Don't treat it as an optional extra. It backs up your designs.
And in an agency. Client services.
Often built into scoping. Being external can be an advantage. You can ask those dumb questions. Internal folks might not.
How about in-house, big established company?
Politics can be a bigger factor there. Customer service is often a goldmine for insights. Understanding the existing research culture is key.
Versus in-house at a startup.
Often faster, more agile. Focus on understanding the audience and business context quickly. Documenting assumptions is vital because things change fast.
And working with agile dev teams seems like a common challenge.
Yeah, the sprint cadence. Hall suggests decoupling research planning from the 2-week sprint cycle. Do ongoing research, prioritize high-value questions, analyze quickly. Use research like a periscope guiding development.
This idea of rigor comes up next, just enough rigor. Not necessarily academic rigor, but professional standard.
Exactly. Like journalists, she says. A commitment to accuracy, understanding bias.
Ah, yes, bias. She stresses acknowledging it's unavoidable, right?
Totally. The key is awareness. She mentions a bias checklist, things like design bias, how you frame things, sampling bias, who you talk to, interviewer bias.
Sponsor bias may be going easy on feedback if the client is watching.
Right. Or social desirability bias, people telling you what they think you want to hear. The Hawthorne affects people acting differently because they know they're being observed. Being mindful is step one.
And ethics are a core part of rigor, too.
Absolutely. Ethical goals, not designing harmful things. Transparency with participants, no trickery. Informed consent, always.
Protecting participant safety and privacy. She mentions never doing phone interviews while driving.
Yeah. Seems obvious, but good reminder. Basically, treat participants with respect and protect their data. Be a skeptic, question your own assumptions.
Okay, so rigor involves ethics and bias awareness. What about best practices? She links this to discipline, like Benjamin Franklin's checklists.
Yeah, practical things to ensure quality. Phrasing your core research question clearly, setting realistic expectations about what research can deliver.
Being prepared, having materials ready.
Allowing enough time for analysis, don't rush that part. And taking good dictation, meaning effective reporting and communication of findings. Bad reporting can undo good research.
She warns about spreading misinformation if you lack rigor.
Definitely. Sloppy research can be worse than no research if it leads you down the wrong path based on flawed data or interpretation.
This brings us nicely to the ultimate question. How much research is enough? That Rumsfeld quote about knowns and unknowns.
Right. Research helps navigate the unknowns and reduce the risk of being wrong about critical assumptions. You can't eliminate all risk, but you can reduce it significantly.
So identify the big assumptions, the ones where being wrong would really hurt.
Exactly. What if you're solving the wrong problem entirely? What if users just don't get it? What if a competitor eats your lunch? What if you build features nobody cares about?
The Science Center online store, again, assuming social sharing is key. Research might show something else drives purchases.
Precisely. So enough isn't a number of interviews or surveys. Hall says it's when you feel sufficiently informed and inspired.
That satisfying click. I like that phrase.
Me too. It's that moment when the data starts forming clear patterns, the pieces fall into place, and you think, okay, I understand this well enough now to start designing a solution. You have clarity.
But she cautions against seeing patterns too early, right?
Yeah.
Collaboration helps.
Yeah, bouncing findings off teammates helps sanity check your interpretation. Avoid confirmation bias. But eventually you learn to recognize that click, that feeling of, okay, we've got enough to move forward thoughtfully.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. We've covered a lot from just one chapter. The big takeaways seem to be involve the whole team, tailor your research type to your question.
Understand the different roles needed, be ready to counter objections, adapt to your work context.
Maintain rigor and ethics, even if it's just enough. And listen for that satisfying click to know when you've learned enough for now.
That sums it up pretty well. The core message is that research isn't some mystical, complex thing reserved for experts. It's a fundamental part of good design thinking that everyone can and should participate in.
So, for you listening, think about your own projects. Where are the assumptions? What decisions are coming up? How could even a little bit of research give you more confidence, maybe help you find that click?
It's about being curious and reducing the risk of being wrong.
Absolutely. We'd love to hear what you think. Any questions this sparked, feel free to reach out.
And join us next time for another deep dive.
Until then, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep designing things people actually need and enjoy using.